Okay, well, hello everyone. How is the sound? Derek Neal asking for salvation. So, does everyone hear me? Very good. So, it's good on Twitch. I hope it's good on YouTube also. I'll just start. So, let's see. There was a lot of talk about this whole thing that's happening in the lower right. I think I'll take a look at that first. So, let's start that. So yes, this move is probably not so good. It would have been perfectly normal for white to be doing something like this, extending to the left. This would have been the natural move. So instead, white plays here, and it was suggested maybe white would cut, and we're going to look at this position, and black will probably play something from the side here. It turns out that white's stone at 3, the stone on the third line at 017, that's going to be a wasted stone. So for instance, white does something like this, maybe something like this. It's easier to compare it with the ponuki actually. So if we take this shape, I actually made a video about ponuki, and I took the time to check out the dress. So those of you who haven't seen my video about the ponuki 30 points thing, the Go proverb video, I do have a link for it here, which I'm going to put in the chat. And you can go and watch that some other time. It's a video about the value of a ponuki and how if you have extra stones stuck to it, such as this white stone 3 at 017, when those extra stones take away the value of the ponuki. So this is an example of a ponuki that's not very efficient. And while in actual practice white might be playing moves like this, it's not such a dramatic improvement because white is, by giving black the capture at 10, that is improving black's position on the left here. And so it's not as if that's a huge difference between this position and the position where white has played upon capture here. So the comparison of this position and the actual game position, where white could have taken like this. So this is a clean ponuki, a much more official, it's a more efficient move. And the exchange of this black stone for this white stone, basically, it was a great profit for black. It was a wasted stone for white, mostly, and a very important connection for black, because the cut there on the 5th line has some nuisance value. So that's how it's better for white to play at 3 than it is to push through on the other side like this. So this was maybe a bit not the best way to play. Some people would call it a bit vulgar. So a bit too forceful. It strengthens black on the left here. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning of the game, just quickly go through the moves. This game is the 4th game of the Strongest Players match, which is a Korean, domestic Korean tournament. And I think they have this round robin league, and this is the 3rd year of it. They have a round robin league and then a final title match. And Shin Jinseo has dominated it so far. But in this match, he had 2 wins, and Shin Minjun won the 3rd game. So this is the 4th game right after that victory for Shin Minjun. And the time control apparently is 2 hours. I only just found that out looking at this, the information on the server, because I couldn't find it on the net previous to this. So it's it's called the Supreme Player sometimes. That was just my translation of what I saw. Okay. Yeah, so they have 2 hours and 3 overtimes of 60 seconds each, according to this, according to the server information. Okay, so this is a point where black has sort of challenged the flying daggers variation. So that would be if white plays here, black will play here. And maybe black's going to cut here, which would lead to one of the most complicated variations of this 3-3 point joseki. So just to show you give you a glimpse of what I'm talking about, in this sequence here, black is threatening to make a ladder of it with this. So this would make a ladder, or if white protects against the ladder, black can capture these two stones. This would be good for black. Of course, the ladder would be a disaster for white. So that's even worse. And so white would be playing here. And this is the most common variation where white can play the hanging connection or maybe connect here. There's a lot of variations. So sometimes you see people play here. And I advise against playing this because it's really confusing. So that's all I'm going to say about that variation. Sometimes you see black cutting on the other side, which is relatively simple. Black would just be playing these forcing moves and living in the corner and stuff like that. So this would be less heated up in the fight. But I think black was sort of threatening to get into that more complicated variation. Sometimes players have plans and they're going to make it difficult for their opponent. So even if they have 2 hours apiece, it is a variation where you have to be very well prepared. So white pulled back. White avoided that more complicated variation. So that's that does still leave the hane on the second line. When white plays here, almost always black will answer here, because if white plays here, black can capture the one stone on this side, and also play something on the other side. So black could play strongly like this, or could play a bit more loosely like this. Usually you see them in the opening, black will play strongly. It turns out that black stones in the corner, they're pretty much alive. So this would be a live shape. White might play here, but it is going to be a live shape anyway. And white's wall, actually, it's not alive yet. So it's not clear that white is going to be attacking in this position. So white has to be careful about that move at 3, because it's not always very successful. So white plays the shimari. This is a point where I would almost always play this shimari, but it's probably just a matter of taste. Okay, so when white plays the second 3-3 point here, and black has to choose which side to cover and all that, you have a lot of choices. So black can cover on the wrong side, you might say, and so let's just go through that. I think we'll have plenty of time to catch up later. Shin Jinseo hasn't played a move since I started, so he's taking some time to think. So yes, make a diagram here. So if black covers on what we would normally call the wrong side, this is would have been wrong before we had AIs. It can sometimes work in that black is going to change the direction of the wall. So if we get into the main line variation like this, black can play here, and if white covers, black can play a double hane, which would lead to something like this. And black would now be controlling the right side of the board, which is the direction that black does want to develop into. Or black can play this one, which is also, if white plays here, black does get a wall towards the right side. A variation you will often see is this one, which sort of depends on the ladder. So when white plays here, if black can capture in a ladder, so yeah, the ladder is not working. So when the ladder is not working, obviously it's bad, and black would play this one. So this is another variation that could happen where black's wall is now pointing towards the right half of the board, which is the right direction for black. So that's how the modern josekis, they do make it possible for black to cover on what we thought originally was the wrong side and sort of switch the direction of the wall and make it work in its own way. But in this game, black played on the right side, and this is a case where the position in the upper left corner affects how black wants to play in the local position. Because, for instance, if we take the old-fashioned joseki, oh yeah, that's the real game move. So yeah, if we take the old joseki, where black extends like this, white will get sente to play something on the side. So this is not played so much anymore. It would be possible to play like this, and black would play something like this. This would be fairly even, actually. But when we look at the position in the upper left, black has a solid position sticking out towards the side like that, and it seems reasonable for black to be playing the game variation where black does a double hane and takes the corner. So this is a joseki. So I would say, sort of in general terms, it's supposed to be even. The local trade is supposed to be even. In actual playing, I would usually say that early in the game, the ponnuki is bigger than the corner. So I would give white an edge early in the game, and this is something I've seen with AI research also. In most cases, early in the game, the ponnuki is bigger than the territory in the corner, and later in the game, the open area of the game, of the board, becomes smaller and smaller, so the ponnuki's value degrades a bit, and it becomes smaller, while since you have less space, the territory in the corner becomes more and more comparably important. So in general, I would say this is good for white early in the game and good for black later in the game. But when we look at the position on the left there, in the upper left corner, black does have a very solid low shape, which reduces the value of the whole area, the whole upper side, the top side of the board, which means that is reducing the value of white's ponnuki already. And even in this early stage of the game, it's okay for black to get into this variation. So I think this sort of depends on the position on the left. You often see them playing 2 3-3-point invasions right next to each other nowadays. And on the second time, you will see the player playing this double hane variation. So white plays, yeah, this is it's just a move that AIs like, and there's ideas of reducing black's right and building on white's left. This is a really crazy looking move, which is supposed to be bad by the, like you say, it's bad to allow your opponent to play a hane on top of 2 stones. So it's not supposed to be a good shape. I first saw this kind of move in a game played by Shibano Toramaru, and that was a couple of months ago, I suppose. So it's been a thing for a while. So these younger players playing each other on the net and using the same programs to study the game, they're sharing these ideas with each other. And so it is a thing, and we're going to see how it's supposed to work. I should say that the normal move locally would be to jump, I suppose. This would be a perfectly normal move. It would not be a bad move. This is the logical move to follow up with from white's shoulder hit. Sometimes you see people playing something towards the side like this, in which case, after taking a stand on the side, white will be thinking of, in some cases, of doing stuff like this. For instance, something like this, or something like this. And making use of that stone at stone on the side to have a position there. So playing the side and then playing away again, if black plays the hane on top, is another thing that I would not be surprised to see. So in the game, white covers here. Naturally, black plays a hane on top, and white played here. So it's interesting if black cuts here. This is a situation where locally, white has no way to capture this black stone. So playing an Atari against it would be very, very bad. It would just increase the local loss. White can't really afford to sacrifice immediately either, because this would just be too good for black. It would be too much of a good shape locally. So what white does is white is going to play a hane underneath, and if black covers, white will connect. And now white is threatening that stone at 1. So if black plays here, white can now capture it. or white can cut here with a double Atari waiting to happen and capture the corner. So white's not in trouble here. So this something like this might happen. White's already alive on the side. Black has some cutting points to deal with and could easily get into trouble here. So this is probably playable for white. It's okay. So instead of cutting, black extended and white played here anyway. Curled around. Yeah, so white was going, if black had covered, white was going to connect. And black decided not to play that exchange. So that was, that seems reasonable. The curling around the center is a big move, and black is beginning to control the right side. Okay, so so white plays one hane here. So like I was saying, when white plays this hane, white is looking at the threat of covering on the second line at e2. But black will almost always cover here because that's just because playing on this side is a bit painful, allowing white to get that exchange. The whole black group is not alive yet, so that would be painful. And black covers here. So if white plays here to cut black off, black can capture the one stone, and that group in the corner is pretty much alive already. I'm not sure what black would do at this point. Maybe something from this side. Black does have a huge right side area, so probably can afford to sacrifice those two stones on the top if white really goes after them. Something like this. Black probably has a better side area. So I think this would probably be okay for black. On the other hand, if black gets to play here, black would be able to handle the problem of those two stones while attacking white on the right. So white's not going to follow up there. And it's interesting, another thing about this variation that some people were talking about where white cuts here, and this is probably not so good when black plays like this. There was some talk about a ladder in this variation. It turns out there's a ladder breaking move here. So this ladder would probably not be the right way for black to handle that. This move breaks the ladder. Without that move, I think the ladder is going to sort of squeeze through there. So let's just play it out. A lot easier than doing it on a real Go board. So having a computer does help. Although it's a lot of moves anyway. Sorry. So yes, it does sort of squeeze through there. But white can play this forcing move, which is going to break the ladder. And this would be a huge lot. This would be a lot of territory in the upper left corner to give back to white. So that's probably not going to be good for, it's not good for black. But if white does cut there, bottom line is black's just going to play like this. This is probably already good for black. The play out ladder button, yes. Let's just hope it's not based on Leela. That would be trouble. Okay, so yeah, this seems a reasonable trade. And white played, okay. White played this move. This was a surprise. So like I was actually, I showed this move to compare the quality of the ponuki here. So I was showing how this ponuki, this was at the beginning of the program here. I was showing how that ponuki is better than this ponuki, because this one has a wasted stone at 1. So I was using that diagram to compare the two ponukis, or the two captures. And actually, I was half expecting white to capture it. So this would have been a very natural move, and it would have settled the corner to a certain degree, threatening to cut on the 5th line and all. So it came as a surprise to see this move. Black pushes through and plays here. Yes. So if black had cut here, white probably has a number of options, but could play a hanging connection here, and it's going to have it could be a troublesome variation for black. So like black plays here and white plays here. This is going to be a ko. But white can probably afford to sacrifice the corner. So something like this. White has co-threats on the side there, and would be getting a lot back. So it could be something like this. Cutting at 1 and connecting at 3, it does seem a bit of a clunky shape. So black curled around instead, leaving the cutting points. Okay, that was forcing. And now white cuts here. So the ladder favors white. So we've already looked into this ladder. And this stone in the upper left is breaking the ladder. So the ladder favors white. That's something we know. Okay. That's what happens when they're playing quickly. So black connected here. That's going to be forcing. And for the time being, that black group seems to be okay. So white's going to have trouble attacking from the left anyway. And black does have a cut at the 3-3 point, or a jump on the second line at Q18. So black does have ways to deal with the corner. For the time being, it's probably pretty important for black to deal with the right side, because white can attack very strongly with this move. And so that would give white a good position on the right. Okay, so yeah, so this is the game variation. Black is taking a stand on the right side, and white does not have eye space yet in the corner. So it's a kind of a Smiggle-like problem. White can probably live. Yeah, but it's bad Aji, isn't it? Yeah, if white plays, for instance, at the 2-2 point, white can probably move in the corner. Right. Alexander Begin is saying that not so long ago, a top player came up with a joseki that was not favored by the AI, but it was good because of a ladder. Ladders do remain to be a kind of a tender spot for AIs, but they're usually, I think AlphaGo and the Chinese program Fine Art, mostly they're going to be okay with ladders. They don't make so many mistakes with ladders, but when you're studying josekis, it is something you have to be aware of. I think Leela still does have some issues with ladders, for instance. So it does depend on which program you're using. But some programs, they do have issues with ladders. So this is the board position. We finally caught up with the game. P13. P13 is a strange move. Oh yes, white's move. Indeed. White is getting squeezed. Would like to have some potential to. White would like to be able to move out on the left here. So with something like this. So this would be the strongest move. It would continue the fight. Otherwise, if white is playing something like this, black captures. So that's already dead. If white plays, white's not going to have any options about like this because black is winning the race to capture. Like this. So white doesn't have anything immediately there. And there is some Aji in the corner with the potential of black playing something like this. This would not be fully alive. So it is a kind of an uneasy position. I think white would be alive in the corner if he plays something like this, actually. So white, this is probably alive, yeah. So it's more attractive for white to be starting a fight, actually. This is what I would want to do if I was white at this position. I think if white can continue fighting, it's still a pretty complicated position. So for instance, something like this. Yeah, maybe it's still tough. Something like that. It does look like white is going to be pushed around a little bit. Okay. Then fished Joseki in the top right. I'm not sure what Leonardo is. Well, yeah, that white group is not so important. Yes, when the James Sedgwick is saying that the AI variations for white are getting wild, and that indeed it is a sign that when one side is getting into trouble, when it's a difficult game, the AI variations do get a bit hard to understand. Okay, so white has defended the corner. This is probably going to be good enough to make a life, and black will capture the two, 3 stones on the outside. So black has a number of ways to do that. So for instance, let's see. So playing here would be the most natural looking move, and it would capture the 3 white stones. Black could do it in a kind of a... this would sort of work. Like there would be a squeeze. White wouldn't want to be trying this kind of stuff anyway. And it might even die. Let's see. Yeah, maybe it's not outright dead, but it's going to be bad for white anyway. Yeah, so it does escape, but this is going to be painful. So this would even be painful. Otherwise, black, the Geta, the net Suji would be one of these two. So black has a number of ways to capture. Usually you want to put a stone in Atari like this, I would say. Oh, but he played here. Okay. So this is threatening to cut at the 3-3 point. Yeah. And so let's see. Doesn't seem to be alive yet. Oh, so black played this one. I would have played the Atari from the 5th line. The corner, it still looks like it can be attacked later. So, so if black plays here, this is going to be threatening to cut at the 3-3 point. If black cuts, if the liberties are open, then black will win by 1 move here. So white has to fill one of the liberties. And if black gets to play here, this is going to be a ko. So locally, it's not 100% alive yet. Okay, so white's doing this. This is an interesting tesuji that you see in some of the classical collections of problems like kanzufu in the Japanese name, or it's guanzufu. I believe that's my approximation of the Chinese name. It's a Chinese collection, and it's not really life and death problems, or at least there's only some of them are life and death. And the rest are usually just shapes that the author wanted to show. And this is one of the tesujis that came up in it, so it's hundreds of years old. And the comparison is with if White had just played something like this to start with. This would be less forceful. So when White starts with the game move and then plays here anyway, that exchange there is it's probably better for White to have it in, because White's already established that Black is going to answer at the mark point. Whereas if White had played it later, Black would have had more choices. And this will make a living shape for the corner. So that seems to be the plan here. And so now White is alive, and I guess they're finished with the local fighting for the time being. Uh-huh. Okay. The Q player learns to set up those codes by watching my videos. I have a whole bunch of Tesuji and Life and Death videos. 200 and almost 260 each. So yeah, just watch those videos on a cycle. You'll probably get some feeling about how to do it. I'd give that advice for Omae no Seidaro, the Japanese person visiting us also, or at least the Japanese name, that is. Um, if you don't have time watching videos or just having them running on the side, you could even make them. I have music accompaniment to my life and death and tezuchi problems. You can turn the sound off if it's bothering. It's not a problem with me. I think some people would enjoy the sound actually, but you can turn it off if it's a problem. It's something you could have just running and affecting your subconscious while you're doing something else. You don't even have to concentrate because the videos are providing the answers, and watching them will improve your feeling for real game positions because they're real games. All of the problems that I'm putting out are relatively simple problems that are in real games. In fact, I could try to find a link. I'll try to find a link for those videos, because I do really advise people that if you want to get strong without spending a lot of time, watching these videos is something that I think would be a good idea. Seriously. So I'm gonna put a link in the chat here, and so that's a playlist at my channel. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel too, in case you haven't. And that's the whole connection. So that's the whole collection. So it's tesuji problems as well as life and death. Okay, so a few moves. Black played away. So this is a big move. It gets rid of the ko that White could have played. So White was, if White has good ko threats, at some point White could be playing, let's see, just a random move for Black here. White could at some point be playing a ko here. So this is one of the threats that White has locally. And so capturing there, it is a big move. Okay, the Korean guest is asking, do I live in Tokyo? I live close to Tokyo. I live in Japan. So I live in a place called Chiba, which is maybe it's close to the airport, depending on which airport you use. It's a big move that could be played any time. So Rick is asking, does that capture suggest that Shin Jinseo is feeling happy about the position, the overall position after the fight? And that could be true to a certain extent, but it's also a reasonable move that could be played very early in the game. It's a big move. And in this board game, in this position, I do have the feeling um, that black has strong positions toward the center, and white's potential towards the center from the left side towards the center is pretty small. So in this game, I would say that the territory there in the upper left corner, capturing that one stone is pretty important. So black does have two corners on the top side. Seems to have a slight lead in territory, actually. Although white has erased the lower right corner, black has about 10 points in the upper right and more than 10 points in the upper left and a territory on the lower side. And that whole side on the left, it doesn't look like it's going to amount to very much just because of the fact that black has such a strong position, strong positions towards the right. So there's nowhere for white to spread out to. Okay, A. Salon is asking about counting the score. The score. Oh, Jack Chow is asking. Looks like he's asking for the second time about: is there a real strategy where you mimic or copy your opponent's moves? There is the strategy called mirror goal, where you are copying your opponent's moves exactly. So you would copy in the diagonally the opposite side of the board, mirroring your opponent's moves. And it was a strategy that was played a lot by a Japanese player called Fujisawa Hosai when he had, I think he did it mostly with white, and people found ways to refute that. So it was refuted by people mostly by using ladders. So you can get a position where you set up a ladder, and after you set up the ladder, there's two ladders. If your opponent mimics you, the two ladders hit each other in the middle of the board, going diagonally towards each other. And the player who is chased first is going to play the final decisive point that saves the one side and kills the opponent's group. So creating a ladder is one way to refute copycat goal or mirror goal when it's played by white. So if you're black and your opponent copies you, there are various strategies that involve ladders. In modern times, people don't do that, but they do play. So for instance, instead of copying the upper right corner and the lower left corner, which would be what I call perfect mimical, some players do get into the same position, for instance, in the upper right corner and the upper left corner, which would be, it's actually a different thing because then the relationship to the other corners becomes different, and it's not really copying. It's not interesting to me anyway, but it's still um, it's not exactly copying it in that you can it doesn't, the ladder strategy doesn't work. So there is that idea. It's not really working very well. Actually, mirror go is one strategy you can try against computers, AIs, if you want to try to beat an AI. Ladder go was one of the more successful strategies. But to be frank, it's no fun. You're just copying your opponent. Okay, someone's asking about the c5 cut. So that the cut at c5, Ballesterosa. So that's actually something that I should have been talking about. The c5 cut is probably not a big issue. So white's more interested in getting a position towards the side. And if black does cut there, of course it does depend on the ladder. Looks like the ladder favors black. But maybe not. Let's try this ladder. This looks like it's a ladder that could be a bit dangerous. Because those black stones here in the lower right, they do have a shortage of liberties. So surprisingly enough, this ladder is going to favor white. So it's even a ladder. But even if we assume it's not going to be a ladder, white can pull back here. Usually it's just going to be very painful for black, even if black manages to win. So something like this, for instance. And white would be able to squeeze, so like something like this. And white would get the territory on this side, maybe something like this. White would get a big side on the left side. So it wouldn't be, even in this case, where we've allowed the black group to escape and capture white, even this would not be a great success for black. Okay. Right. So the game moves here. Black is still trying to build up on the left side. So interestingly enough, black did not play this exchange. So this is an exchange black could have played. It doesn't stop white from connecting underneath yet. So white still has this move. In the game, white still has this move. So white does have ways to connect. Black can stop white from connecting by playing all of these moves. Maybe here. But it does give black a kind of a shortage of liberties. So when this happens and white starts doing stuff like this, for instance, black's group does have fewer liberties because of all these moves that black had played at 1 and 3. So in that way, it is a kind of a cumbersome way for black to play. Eventually, black will have to play this exchange when black actually sets out to make the territory. So for instance, if we assume white plays something like this, and black actually decides to make a territory of the right side, it's conceivable that black would do that and add a stone there, and then black would need to have that exchange on the first line. So black is looking at something like this, something along this line. Or if white plays to connect, then black can attack here. It's not as if this white group is going to die, but it is going to get pushed around and forced to live on a small scale. Looking at the left side, naturally this was a ladder, so black's not going to do that. More likely that black would play a move like this and something like this. White would probably actually crawl, and it's still not a big deal. Or black could just play on the side like this in order to try to attack on a large scale. So this is something that would be conceivable, provided black can actually keep things connected here. So like there is the question of what happens when white starts doing things like this. It does look a bit dangerous for black still. But this would be more like things that black could be thinking of doing. Saying that doesn't work, it would mean that maybe, so going back to this variation, maybe more likely that black would be trying to attack white on a large scale like this. Yeah, so Derek is asking about, is it okay for black to be building on the right like this? And white's moyo on the left, it's not the kind of moyo that white can expand into the center, because black already has a position in on the lower side, which is sort of erasing white's potential in the center. So for instance, it's not the kind of moyo where white can play a move like this and expect to actually get the territory, because black will just jump in here. I don't see black getting in any kind of trouble trying to live inside here. So it's more likely that white's going to play a move like this, in which case black would have ideas to control the center. So black would be able to maybe dominate the center with something like this. Probably would not continue locally, but stuff like this could be more of closer to the idea that black would do. It's just it's the best white can expect of this left side is a side territory. It doesn't really expand into the center. Rick is asking, what would white be able to live on the right if he decides to? Yes. Well, for the time being, white can play here, and if black connects, white can connect up. And black is leaving that option to white. So black would probably just play away at this point, or at a later time in the game, black could play here. Or sometimes if he wants to try to save everything, he could connect and clamp. So this is one way white can handle it. Otherwise, white could play here, probably play this exchange first. White has forcing moves like that. If white really wants to, white would have enough room to live on the side. It's just that in the process, black would be getting stuff in the center. So like if we assume this, it is going to take a few more moves for white to live. Like white could play here. I'd say this is alive. And then black's going to do this kind of stuff, pushing white around and then invading the left side. So it's, although white could live, it's not necessarily the best idea. I think white still has enough room. Oh, white played here. So this is threatening the connection. If I were black, I would not bother to connect immediately, but it is a move that black can play. So this is, be interested to see if he plays this or not. The time controls. Those plays asking about the time controls. It's 2 hours a piece, and there's 3 sets of 60 seconds over time. Yes, C8. Well, going further towards the lower part of that left side would be a bit dangerous. So let's try to answer that question a bit. Dojius Mr. Bobbins. Oh no, that's not him. It was Photon 101. Sorry about that. So if white would sort of, if we look at the whole side and just choose a point somewhere in the middle, it would be more like this or like this that white might play. And then black would play here. And it would be too many times to curl on the second line. This looks a bit unlikely. But if white ends up playing something like this, then we can start to see a position where black has potential of isolating this white group in the upper left. And that would be potentially a problem for white. So we could even go as far as to say that in that variation, to make a variation ideally good for black, we could have this game variation where black gets these forcing moves, something like this, and then plays here, and now white's really in trouble. So there's this idea that if white gets isolated like this, white's going to be in trouble. So that's the meaning of this move, and it's making a loose connection to that white group. So in this case, if white plays like this, black cannot actually cut here. There's no cut. because this is actually a knit. So yeah, so like that. So this is was captured. Black can't even cut. So cutting is not an option because cutting immediately is a ladder, and it wasn't important anyway. But it's actually the cutting point is not. Black is not able to play it because black would be captured. So it does connect white up, and it makes an extension towards the side, and it has to be relatively close to the wall because that wall is actually a very weak group. So that's my answer to Photon 101. Okay, so it's black's turn. Yeah, I stream a lot. Just I copy my streams to Twitch, so you're chatting from Twitch, so you can find me here. Or you can see me on YouTube. So yeah, you can watch for my if you sign up to my YouTube channel, you will get notifications. I don't know how the Twitch actually works. I'm relatively new to Twitch. Or you can go to my let's see, I can't find it now. You can go to my Twitter account. And at Twitter, I do tweet about things that I'm about to do. Let's see if I can find a link for you guys. Now, there we go. So I think this must be my Twitter account. I have an English one and a Japanese one. So just hoping I'm not giving you the wrong one. Okay. Okay, so the best local move, obviously, is to connect. And it is pretty big. And white can connect underneath. And locally, black can play here. So this is, if white plays here, this is going to be a ko. So black will play here, and white plays here. White can make a ko out of it. You have to remember that this one is the snapback. This is the mistake. So black would play here. It would be a ko. It could eventually affect the life or death of the white group in the corner, or at least locally. So that would be a potential problem for white. So that's how black could play locally. Let's see what, otherwise, okay, he played on the left side. So that's a very light move. A bit more light than I had expected. The C6 peep with DH, sorry, D8 attachment. Well, with the, okay, just to show the C6 peep once more, I don't see an attachment on top. So like, white would probably just continue playing towards the left side because it's more important. So stuff like this. And it's always going to be difficult for black to, it's going to be bad shape for black to be cutting here. So this would just be really painful. So in this case, black's just dead. So it's not really working. So white would just keep on pushing, and then white could afford to sacrifice the stones or maybe save them like this. So I don't think so. I do get the feeling when Shin Jinseo plays here, he seems to be feeling good about the overall position because he is playing in a kind of a Pacific way here. He's avoiding the more difficult, complicated variations. I would have just wanted to invade on the third line as my local move because that white group does not have two eyes yet. So he probably thinks that controlling the center should be good enough for this game. Okay, let's see. Leonardo is asking a question that I didn't understand. Black M5, Black M5. Black M5 is this move. No, that's not right. Black M5 was this move. So what variation did I show in response to that? Did I show white answering something like this, maybe? It would be normal for white to play if the top side was big, white could play moves like this or moves like this. And another move would be this one. It's one of the options that white has. In this position, the upper side, the top side, there's just not so much room there, so white's probably yeah, so this area, right, Leo? So yeah, I don't think it's a very big area in general, just because the top left area is so settled for black. And so it's okay. White would probably play something like this, actually, but it's okay for white to be playing away. Okay, when your opponent plays a shoulder hit like this, traditionally we would always play a push or a crawling move. So you generally want to answer directly. In modern times, you often see players trying different things because that's a kind of an AlphaGo thing. Okay, so SSK Go is saying that SGS Shin Jinseo is not looking so happy. Okay, so white pushed. Right. Okay, Alex Weavers is asking about a move on the bottom side of the board. There's the fact that black has such a solid position to the right of the bottom side. It means that black would not be satisfied to play some simple extension like this, and would rather want to be grabbing more space with a more efficient move. So for instance, something like this is something that black might want to play at some point. But it's not such a huge area. So like even if white plays here, white could play a move something like this or something like this, but it would be a limited amount of space. And playing right up against the black wall, it wouldn't have any effect on black on the right. White would probably rather to play something like this or something like this, try to play an actually forcing move, but would have to back off after that. So white does have various forceful moves from the center, so stuff like this maybe could affect the fight on the left there. So this would be more realistic. I'd say the side is relatively small, and after they finished doing stuff on the left side, so like if we have a position where it starts looking something like this, and black could play forcing moves like this, or maybe just like this, then black would be able to sometimes would like to find an efficient way of handling the bottom side um, in a way that sort of cooperates with other stones on the board. So black would be looking for something more efficient like this, rather than just hurrying to play the side. In fact, even the right side is probably more important. So I'm still looking at this move as one of the things that black can do here. This is a pretty big move. For white, capturing here is still a big move. Okay, so black plays here. So this is interesting. So if white answers from the corner in a less forceful way, it's just locally a kikashi. And also in some cases, black is going to be looking at playing here to get some territory on the side. D12. D14 was probably an option. Okay, so that's Mr. Robbins from OJS again. So playing a move like this is something that, let's see, the D14 is this attachment here. It's a move that we see a lot in modern games. So this is something black could probably have played. If white plays a hane on top, black can play hane underneath. Getting into a fight, something like this. In this case, black might actually connect here. I did show a video about this, the AI Joseki for the one space Shimari, where I was showing a variation like this. In this case, white might just play something like this, and left side is getting fairly big here. So I think black will probably connect here in this particular variation. Something like that. So yes, the attachment is a move that can be played. I think this move, which was sort of suggested a little bit, it would be kind of a shape move, but it would be a bit slack. It would be slow. So in the game, black played here. And this is threatening, for instance, it's threatening the slide at B15. It's also threatening the peep at C16. So if white plays from the other side, black can play here and scoop out the corner. Okay. S12, it's not, I don't like it. Now, why I don't like it, that's going to be hard to explain. But I don't like S12. It doesn't really handle black's problems here. It gives white the capture here, which is going to improve the status of white's corner territory by a great deal. And it doesn't really finish off that stone that white has on the side either. And so white has these forcing moves here. So for instance, stuff like this. And let's see if even something like this could be annoying for black. And the fact that white's corner territory is completely secure. This exchange black played in the corner with R18 for Q18, that's turned into a bad exchange. And so it's not really working so well for black. So yeah, I think if black plays locally on the right side, it will have to be the connection. Which, this connection, it is, to a certain degree, it's putting pressure on white's corner group. Right, so James Sedgwick is giving us the fine art information about the game and saying that fine art does value this move here. So it's a big move for white to play, and it would make it very difficult for black to continue surrounding the left side. So obviously this is problematic. Black could jump, but with the open side there, it's not going to be a big territory anymore. So that's a big move for white to play. Q12 for black. R17. Yes. Yes, the corner, it's going to be alive, but it does get squeezed a little bit. So white's going to end up putting some stones into that corner if the corner gets isolated. So there is some extra value to connecting at Q12 for black, as Alex Weavers was saying. And that, yeah, moving out to, let's put it on the board. So for white, moving out into the center, that would also be relatively painful. So in a position like this would be threatening to take away white's eye space in the corner. So like this kind of thing, it's not going to be alive. Actually like that. Yeah. So this is not 100% alive. If white connects, black can play here. Yeah, like that. So it's not alive. It's some kind of a ko in the corner. So locally, it's not 100% alive. That was after white played away twice, but both of black's moves are significantly big moves. So like one is big, Justin is big in itself, and 3 is cutting white off on the first line. If white does something like plays a move, white should be able to live, but it is kind of uncomfortable. So this would still give black some potential to squeeze white down to 5 or 6 point territory here. So it's going to be painful. So each move, it does have some extra value attached to it. And also this ko, when they get into this ko, it's going to be a dangerous ko for white also. It's going to be a dangerous ko for both sides, in that this is attacking white in the corner. So this whole thing, again, it's not 100% alive. It's going to be a ko. And as Alex was saying, escaping out into the center, it's not the most attractive option for white anyway, because white's just going to be playing dame points here. So while 8 and 10 was a huge ko threat, the ko is, in general, it's going to be a dangerous ko for black to play. I mean, for white to play also. So everything in this area is pretty big because it does affect what happens to the lower right corner. Okay, so white did extend towards the side. That's unexpected. I didn't think that this side was so important. And black covers there. And white played a honey on top. Kind of a replay of what was happening in the lower right. Okay, goodbye, Leonardo. See you on, and yes, you can watch the video later. Okay, so that's a weak point in black shape, I suppose. But we have to remember white's position also has a lot of cutting points. So black can try to take advantage of them maybe. Okay. So Rick is saying he's being annoyed by this white move. It is an annoying move, so there's no really good way for black to connect up. Um, Black might just be playing something like this and could sacrifice 2 stones on the outside, maybe. Otherwise, black's going to get cut off. So there's sometimes black can do something like this and try to connect up in a kind of a ko-like situation. So for instance, if white plays like this, then it would, so for instance, in a shape like this, it would depend on how this works or it doesn't. So there's some complications involved with this. I'm not sure this is actually working for black though. So yeah, so sorry. I was talking about this move, doing it on the wrong board. So this move, and this kind of thing is something that black could be doing. And yes, so something like this, for instance, sacrificing 2 stones on the top, or sometimes black can try doing stuff like this. And there's various problems with this. So like there's the cut here and the cut here. But that's, in some cases, black can sacrifice the stones on the top. So if white does stuff like this, then there's the potential ladder. Sometimes black can just connect up this side. So there is some potential damage happening here, but it depends on, in this case, black would still have the extension. So it's not working 100% for white. And there's this kind of possibility. Maybe white's going to be able to leave the dame open. Variations like this are a real possibility where black does get a better position, but white is getting some extra corner territory. Black would have attacks like this, maybe reducing white's side territory. It would be close to even. This would be a fairly even exchange, I believe. Maybe more likely for black to be sacrificing the 2 stones on the top. So just locally something like this, and something like this. Yeah, so that was showing, right? Yeah, very good. Okay, by the clock I see here, the time seems to be about equal. So Shin Minjun has about an hour left, and Shin Jinseo has about an hour and 12 minutes left. So they're pretty close on time. I guess they'll be going on for a couple of more hours before they get into overtime. So maybe about 3 hours left in this match if they play to the end. Mhm. Okay, James Sedgwick is saying that even now Fine Art says to ignore D12, and that's the white move that was just played, and play it Q12. So that would be this move. I'm not sure if it's going to be Sente in this case, though. Yes. The problem with human players is that we have a story about the game. After playing all this stuff on the left side, it does become harder, more and more difficult to to choose to play on the right side, even if it's something that the players are sort of they might be thinking about that point, but once they've got started on the left, it's very difficult for them to choose to play away from it like that. Okay, so black just crawled. And so white can push through. Or cut, I suppose. Yeah, I think the idea is that black is just going to sacrifice the 2 stones on the top, on the 5th line. Okay, Safari is saying that Shin Minjun sometimes seems to have a good game against Shin Jinseo. And I would agree, yes. In this whole set of 5 games, I actually missed it for the first few days. So I was busy and I didn't see it. But looking at the games, there was a game that was only a half-point difference. And yeah, so Rick is asking, can white hane instead? It sort of is similar to this variation. So if white plays the hane, black's going to play here anyway. So like hoping for a move like this or something, it's not going to happen. So it's going to be like this. And actually that exchange of 1 for 4 is probably not so good. So it's probably better for white just to push through. And black played here. White cut. Okay. They jumped ahead a bit. White cut. And so there's pros and cons to this move that black chose to play. So like if black had played here, it would lose a tempo, but it would give a better territory for black on the left. And let's see, white would probably play. White's not really captured those stones yet, so this wouldn't be a ladder either. Although maybe white can play a ladder breaking move like this. That was a ladder breaking move. Yeah. So yeah, the good thing about playing 1 and 3 for black here is it was filling white's liberties. Looks like maybe white can play a ladder breaking move and capture a ladder. So the advantage of this move is that it keeps a tempo, so it keeps sente. And I suppose white will answer. White would usually answer like this. Or maybe this would involve a ko, I suppose. So if white plays here, that's potentially a ko involved. So to avoid that, white would usually play something like this. And black does have some room there. I wonder if he's going to try to do something with those 2 stones. He could just slide here and take the territory. I think this would be an option. Could black have connected with b12? So this is standard trickiness. Could black have connected with b12? Okay. So that would be this move. So if black connects, white's going to push through. When this happens, black is split into 2 groups and would usually have to be able to find a way to put a lot of pressure on these white stones in the middle. So like, for instance, something like this is probably not going to be good enough for black. So black would really need to have something like this, or a squeeze, something like this would have to work. And actually white might push here and capture this one. So it's a kind of a possibility if black can find something along the line that I'm showing here that actually works. Actually white can connect underneath here and black has no way to capture the 3 stones. So that could be a reason for it not to work for black. So it's more reasonable, I think, to sacrifice the 2 stones on the 5th line. Okay, so black is just sacrificing those 2 stones, and let's see, will white play... This would be the net, and this would be another way to handle the situation. Black's probably not going to run away immediately anyway. Okay, Mr. Robbins put it well, I think. In the style of play for humans, it does have a kind of an inertia where we tend to try to justify the moves that we played before earlier in the game. And that's actually a very successful pattern for humans to follow, because this logic of making the best of the moves that we've already played is the way we find good moves. And so it's the thing that works for human players. And sometimes it's hard to see that pattern happening with computer programs, which is one of the things that makes it so difficult to understand them sometimes. So strong players have reasons for each move that they played, and they involve the moves that have already been played on the board. And that's because early in the game, you can have these joseki positions like happened in the upper right corner or the upper left corner. Locally, it can be argued that they're even positions. But for instance, in these positions in this game, black has taken the corner territory, and white has gotten some profit towards one of the sides in return. So the players have made choices that prioritize certain parts of the board or certain things about the board more than other parts of the board. And because of that, the following moves have to the players try to emphasize the good points of the choices they made. So any move that you play in the opening especially is going to have a good side to it and a bad side to it. So you're gaining something on one side and giving something back to the opponent on the other side. And in the follow-up, you have to try to make the good side of your moves come out and shine, while the bad side, you try to sort of suppress the bad side of the moves you've played. So being consistent like that is a very human thing. It's very important for strong players. But that's not the way that computer programs think. If what they do is what you would call thinking. So I enjoyed that question. So thank you, Mr. Bonus. So obviously white's not going to play away here. But white, like I said, white can play a net. White could just push out, and for most purposes, this is going to be a ladder. So if black tries to escape, white does have a fairly forceful move here, which is going to put a lot of pressure on black on the bottom here, and cuts off those 3 black stones in the center. It's big enough that it's probably more important than anything happening on the left there. So white has this ladder breaking move. I guess today's theme is I'm just going to be chasing these ladders. So this is a ladder. So that's another way white can do it. Or white can play the net. Or even if white plays here, it's not likely that black is going to do something like this, which looks like it's a very heavy shape. And the value of this is that when white plays here, white does have things like this. So there's a weakness in black's position on the left. Okay, so black peeped. Okay, so white pushed through, and black peeped. So let's see, I'll try to make a variation here. If white comes here, and black pushes through, white's position in the corner is falling apart. So that's because if white plays here, black can then finally capture these stones. So white's going to lose a great deal towards the corner. For instance, something like this. Black might even extend here. Let's make it this way. And the question is, how dead is the black group? It's probably not all that dead. So black could play moves like this, since the latter favors white. And this would be, it would be either a ko like this, or black could sacrifice the stones with something like, well, maybe something like this. I guess it depends. It's more exciting to play the ko, I suppose. So there's still some stuff happening there after black has already profited in the lower left corner. So that profit that black gets in the lower left corner is almost 15 points for black, and the whole corner is gone. So that was big enough, maybe. Or black could try to live on the side if black played something like this, I suppose. So that would be another option. Or things like this. So something like this would be an attempt to live on the side. It looks like it's alive. So yes, black could do that also. So white allowed black to connect underneath, and the corner has become black's the left side. It turned into a black territory. That's interesting. So black has about 10 points there. I'd say that when white fills this liberty, white's probably setting up to capture the 3 stones on the right side. So here black can either push on this, is that the 6th line, or can just capture the 2 stones. Okay, Ethan Winter is asking about white playing b16, but I don't really see when white had an option to do that. So for instance, if we go back to, it would be back towards the beginning of this whole thing. So white could have played b15 with this move, for instance. Something like this would be very tight, or white could play here, white could play here. White had ways to defend the corner. After this is started, yeah, it's still like locally white could play here. It would be a rather passive move. And once this game variation started, yeah, I guess there's a kind of a momentum to this that white just didn't have time. So at this point, it's already too late to play b16. White is going to squeeze black a little bit here. So yes, and we're back to the game position. Oh, sorry, didn't want to do that. Okay, we're at the board position, the present board position. And black is eventually going to have to cut at L16, but can play a push on the top first. So this would be a variation where black could squeeze here. And it's going to be okay if black plays it. So this is close enough to be, actually white can do stuff like, this would be a kind of a deficit call for white. This is the best that white can do. Otherwise, black just connects underneath. So yes, that doesn't really work for white. And white's probably going to extend or something. And black can capture the 2 stones. Okay, Mr. Bobbins is going to bed. Thanks for staying here. I realize it's middle of the night for so many people. This is when they play the games in Asia, so it can't be helped. But the video will remain on my YouTube channel, so just go there and you'll be able to see it. Okay, so when white played at 017, I suggested that he was going to capture 3 stones on the side, and that's because this has exaggerated the value of this connection. Because if white does that, and if black does that and then plays here, it will make it easier. This is going to be more forceful, and it's going to make it relatively easy for black to molest this white group. So it's still gonna be a ko or something, but the fact that white did not have time to play at R19 and had to immediately connect at 5, it does mean that that move at 017, it filled a valuable liberty. So there's even more reason now for, so white took the 3 stones. So there's even more reason for white to play this move. And again, this exchange of R18 for white Q18, it has become a bad exchange because it's increased the size of white's territory. So actually, black lost more than 3 points with that exchange if we compare it to the normal variation. So that was a significant loss of territory caused by this exchange that black played in the lower right corner. So while you can't always say that that was a mistake in itself, it does emphasize the value of capturing the 3 stones that white just played. Okay, now he's attacking that white group. Right. Rick is saying he sees pros ignore that attack on the Ponuki a lot. And that's because one reason would be that it depends a lot on the board position. In this board position, the black move that is just being played, it's actually a ladder breaking move. So there's this ladder on the left that is an issue that can be considered. So white does have to consider the fact that black might escape from the ladder. So let's take a look at that one. So let's say white plays here, and then lives here. One thing is that it's sort of painful to be playing all these moves on the second line. And there's also the fact that now the ladder is going to favor black. And so when the ladder favors black, white probably is going to end up playing something like this to live on the side. And black will be able to push that around. Fortunately for white, this ladder is not going to be working for black, is it? So white has played a ladder breaking move at K5, K15. So that one is working. So maybe it's not such a big deal. So white can live there, but it is a lot of moves on the side. So if black adds a stone to it, for instance, something like this, Sometimes this is good enough, although there is some aji involved with this stuff. If black plays something like this, it's fairly solidly a black territory there. Something like 15 more black points. This whole area added onto the black territory. So it's big. It's close. It's about in the vicinity of about 20 points difference. So it's a big move. It's just that in a lot of real game situations, at the time black plays this move, there are a lot of moves that are in the vicinity of 20 points elsewhere to play. So sometimes it's just not the biggest thing. So this is kind of borderline. I don't see so many huge moves left. So it's a position where white can go into that variation. Also, sometimes the test strategy is to play the attachment here. So this attachment would be trying to connect and at the same time trying to be sort of rising up to the third line here. Obviously, black can't do this. That would lose the black stones. So black has to pull back at some point, and white would be able to connect underneath. So this would be a connection on the first line, but looking at the entire white group, white is going to be up on the third line here. So in a position where there's some value to that, white can do that. But in this board position, I'd say it's probably the local move is probably going to be this one. It's just that it's sort of painful, just locally. Okay, so white did deal with the ladder thing. So this maintains the ladder, so it's keeping that chunk of area for white. And white's going to sacrifice those 4 stones. Okay, so let's take a... Okay, black finished them off. That was easy to understand. So that's captured those stones. And let's see. The right side is still a big point. So there's, for instance, white could play something like this on the right side, and it would be connected to white's group. I say if white goes any further, then black would be jumping inside and trying to attack white there. So I'd say that it probably makes sense for white to play like this, connected up to the lower right. That's a big move. All these side areas, they're pretty much finished now. So the top side is endgame stage now. The move that black might be thinking of playing would be this one. So this, although it's not connected up to the corner, if white tries to cut it off, this is going to be dangerous for white. So if white plays on the top, white does have a cut to deal with here. So there's this move. This move is something that black can aim to play fairly soon. So this would be a big move. The bottom side is pretty much finished also. There's nothing black can do inside the 3-space extension that white has there. So that's territory. If we look at territory, white has a minimum of 22 points in the lower right. And we'll still have to see how that spreads out to the side. So it's 22 points and less than 10 points in the lower left. So I'd add that up to roughly 30 points. And then this area in the center, which is not defined yet. So white has 30 points plus the center. That was a forcing move. Black has about 25 points in the upper right corner, and it's okay just to be kind of estimating at this point. And has a bit more than 10 points in the upper left, so that's 35 points. So already, if we say that the lower right corner for white and the bottom side add up to about 30 points, black has about 35 in the 2 corners on the top side. So that's enough to roughly to give komi. So then black has this territory on the left side, which is about 10 points, and this territory on the bottom, which is also, it's close to 10 points. So black has about 20 points of territory, while white has some potential in the upper left part of the center. And we've already dealt with the komi to a certain degree. So it's pretty close, but black does seem to have a bit of a lead in territory at this point. Are SGS's moves according to AI? So I don't really, that doesn't seem to be the case in this game to as much as a degree as it usually is. He played a game, I made a commentary of his game against Yosto, that was in the LG Cup, best 16. That was my previous live. SGS Shin Jinseo, that is, he did seem to be struggling a little bit. So maybe he's not in his best form right now. In that game, Yosto, a very promising young player in the Japanese system. He comes from Taipei, but he had a couple of real chances to win. So he had a winning position at a point late in the game. So that was a very good attempt to beat Shin Jinseo. And in the present position, the right side is pretty important. So white's being has played the most active move on the right side. It's trying to get the right side on a large scale, and it would make sense to me if black starts moving out with those two stones. So something like this, or something like this, maybe something like this. So something towards the right side. It's not very clear to me whether these black stones, which are the weaker. So black is weak also, but the two white stones on the right side, they're not very strong either. Every move is hard for me to foresee at this point. This actually, although black is pushing from behind, it does break the ladder. So black's next local move can be escaping here, which could be a problem for white. So there is a threat in this move. Okay, so white covered on top. My favorite move in Go history. I'll have to think about that one and make a video about the game, I suppose. I think the main focus of this game now is probably on the right side of the board. So I'm really interested to see exactly what happens on the right side. All right. Yungen Tan asking. I hope I pronounced that. I learned how to pronounce your name at some point, but it's been a while. I think I might have forgotten. But asking if I think Dosaku or Hwang Nanshin, Hwang Nonshi. I think that's my approximation of his name. Um, he was one of the famous Chinese players about the same time as Dosaku. Um, they weren't even playing exactly the same game because the Chinese were at that time they were playing with two diagonal star points each to start the game. So they were starting with a set position with 4 stones actually on the board. And that changed to a great degree how they continued to play. So it changed the whole style of their game. And it makes it difficult for me to judge who is the strongest player. I would tend to say that Dosaku was stronger, but Han Lonchi was also a very strong player. The problem is that both of them did not really have equal opponents to play, and so that did change. That it made some of the games that Dosaku played, he was not playing. I would say that he probably was not playing seriously in some of his games, especially against his own students and stuff. So like he was giving them chances and testing them and stuff like that. Um, he wasn't always playing in a competitive environment that would be what we expect of top professionals in modern times. And Juan Nonsi also had a limited, like the number of games that we have of his that are left that we still have is very limited, which makes it hard to judge. But if you ask me, I'd say that Dosaku was probably stronger. So black sort of floated into the white area here, is looking at the attachment. So black is looking at an attachment here to cut the white stone off. So that would, to a certain degree, that would cut off that white group on the left, on the right. So that would be black's aim there. Or black is looking maybe at escaping the ladder. Which is something that black can do. I did make some videos about my own games. Some of my best games. Let's see, I can probably find the playlist. My games. Yes, so I'll show you this playlist. I'll give the link. And you can go there. Some videos about my own games. So there are some of my own games in that playlist. Okay, KJ01A is asking about starting with a peep at 07. Peep at 07. Okay, I think he means Q7. Yes, it must mean Q7. peep at Q7. It's an idea. It does take away some of the potential for black. So we're talking about, let's see, getting back to the game. So we're talking about this peep. It loses potential of moves like this in some cases. So it's not always the best move. And I would generally play it when it actually works directly with something I was going to continue doing on the side. And I have the feeling in this case that black doesn't really need that stone at 2 so much when black does something like this or something like this. It's not as if that that stone at 2 is performing some job that was absolutely necessary. So it's a move that I would. It's okay to play this kind of peep, but usually you would do it when there's some concrete meaning to having that stone there. So in this case, there is some potential loss of moves like this, or various different moves. There's some potential gain to force having white play this exchange, and actually this exchange potentially it reduces white's liberties, so it's not necessarily a good exchange for white either. So just leaving it like this, there's some potential advantage to it. So it does depend a lot on how you judge the surrounding position. The peep is not necessarily going to be a bad move. So the server here says that Shin Minjun now has about 35 minutes. And Shin Jinseo has almost an hour. It says 59 minutes for Shin Jinseo. So they're going to be going on for a couple more hours. I would like to take a short break here, just to get some tea and maybe something to keep me going for the rest of the live stream. But I'll be back. Let's say I'll be back in half an hour. This is a point where I wouldn't be surprised to see Shin Minjun putting in a lot of time for his next move. So it is a point where the game dealing with these open spaces in the center is difficult, and it's a point where I would expect the players to be slowing down a bit. And so I'm going to leave it for half an hour. So I'll put up the clock again and hope to see you back in, let's see, 30 minutes. So I'll put up the clock. And goodbye for now. And I'll give you a link to sign up to my channel, just in case you haven't done that yet. And also, those of you who want to support my channel by giving donations, Patreon is a great place to do that. So just in case you want to help me continue to provide Go contents throughout the world, just go to Patreon and take a look at my page there. And so I'll put up a clock now. And I'll come back in half an hour. Okay, I'm back. So, yes, TLS is talking about the present position, and black has way more solidified territory than white. Only sure territory that white has is in the lower right. That's true. And the counter argument is that black also has weak groups on the top and the right side. So just the right side actually. So yes, I'm back, and I can talk about that evaluation of the board position. Black does have a lot of solid territories. So the upper right corner, it's in the vicinity of 25 points, and the upper left corner is about 10 points. Left side is a bit more than 10 points. Lower side is about 10 points also. So black has about 55 points at least, and white has more than 20 points in the lower right corner, so that's something like 22 at the minimum. And then very little territory to speak of on the left side. Yeah, very little. Just a few captured black stones and nothing much more. Should be able to get 10 or 20 points there, but black does have a sizable lead in territory. So it all depends on how much white can attack this black group on the right side. So it all focuses on that. I'd say that Shin Minjun sort of headed towards this kind of board position where you had a lead in territory and just had to deal with the one weak group. So that trend, it all started with this move here that happened just before I took a break, where black was reducing the one area that looked like it could develop into a fairly large white territory. So if black had done something like this on the right, it would have been a very normal way to play. After a bit of fighting, there's the potential that white would start building in the center of the board and get something close to, at a maximum, something around 20 points maybe. Some area here, basically, is what white was going to be trying to make. So he took away that area first, and is basically saying that the right side is going to be hard for white to make into a territory in any case. So white plays these moves. If white had followed up with a move here, this black group, it does not actually have two eyes. So if we assume, while neither side will play these moves, if we assume this shape, black has a false eye there, and so it doesn't really have two eyes for the whole group. So there's the potential that moves like this could become forcing moves for white, and it would be very painful if black was eventually forced to play a move like that. So that's how this move was pretty important. If white had played that first, then of course black would be able to maybe here. Black would then play a move towards the center, and it would be just a different game. So black would be able to do something like this, maybe something like this. Black would start moving towards the center. So that would change how the game was played. So when white takes this position in the center, it is a very big move for black to play on the side here. And now black invades. So black has a sizable lead in territory. So it's at least 55 points. White only has the 22 points in the lower right plus some bits and pieces elsewhere. So that's close to 30-point difference in solid territory. With admittedly, there's a lot of potential for white in other parts of the board, but compared to the 30 points that black has in solid territory, it's going to be very difficult for white. So it all depends on how much territory white can build in different parts of the board, and maybe some of it's going to be on the right side. But it looks really difficult to attack this black group. So it takes, okay, the angle of my glasses, yeah, they get it screwed up a little bit, always. So if white pushes through here, black can connect up to this side. So that's what the knight's move there is basically setting up in this local position. And black is always looking at the potential of playing this move anyway. So that's a kind of a shape that black's going to be looking for. I'd say it's starting to look difficult for white to attack here. L8. L8 was okay, so L8 was the move that white played in the game. And it was a shape move. It was a reasonably, it looked reasonable. So I think it's going to be difficult. So like there's this variation I showed in the center where white tried to push through this way. It is difficult for white to cut black off in the center. So if white plays something like this, black would bump against it or maybe just play here. It's one of these two moves. It's just going to be very difficult for white to attack successfully here, I believe. So it could be the question of how much white gets on the right side here. If white can get something close to 20 points here, it might still be close. O10. Yes, something like this. K12. K12, something like K12 is a shape move. In most cases, black's going to be okay with something like this. It's just going to be very difficult for white to continue the attack. Black probably even has time to do something like this with the threatened push here, which is potentially cutting white off. I'd say even if white manages to cut the entire black group off in a position like this, it's still going to be rather difficult for white to follow through with a successful attack. It's just the 1 weak group, so that makes it relatively easy for black. White turning at K14. K14, yeah. Okay. K14 is a really good shape move. That's why people are coming up with this idea. It's always a good shape move, and there's the idea that white can eventually squeeze black. But the problem is that even when white plays 2 moves in a row, it's still black winning the race to capture. So it is a bit slow in attacking black here, and it will give black time to add moves to the center like this. So white tried this one. And my first thought is that black can probably connect up in this direction. And if white cuts it off, black can push through here. So this would be my first idea with black. Black can start with this one, but it will tend to make the center more important. So white would be starting fighting on the other side. Fighting on the other side for a bit here. Maybe something like this. This would be giving white something back in the center of the board. So my first idea here would be to bump against white and just play here. This looks like it would save the black group. Okay, back to the game then. The clock on the server says that Shin Jinseo has 47 minutes and Shin Minjun has 6. So if that's right, he's pretty close to getting into overtime. Yeah, I have a problem with these classes. Yes, so white, as David Peter was suggesting, Shin Jinseo is black. Yes. As I was suggesting, excuse me, David Peter was suggesting that white could try to make some territory with moves like that, and it's a valid way of trying to fix the board position. But I think the problem is that white just doesn't have enough space to be catching up with this kind of move. So he's trying something a bit more active, a stronger attack here. Yes. And yes, I do believe this kind of stuff would give white the opportunity to get the right side. So, of course, the ladder doesn't work either. So I sort of like this one better. Okay, so this is the game move. That's good. And he plays there. Looks like black has solved this local problem for the time being. The cut at N11 is going to be a ladder. So like if white does this, white does not have a cut there. It's going to be a ladder. So there's nothing really that white can do to capture the black rook, and white will have to settle with. So yeah, so white had to do that. Cutting black off and allowing black to break through the center, that would have been bad. It would have just been bad. So something like this. This would be actually giving black a very good position there. So yeah, so this was sort of forced. And it's going to be a question of how much white can get back in the center. It doesn't look like it's going to be very much. There's nothing happening on that side. If white had cut, black would have been able to push through, and it's already, that white group is dead. So it would be something like this. And it would just die. So white peeped. And black connected. And here white can try this, but it's going to be just black connecting up. Black has a number of ways to do this, but black's just going to connect up on the side. Nothing really happening with that either. In actual play, white would probably try something like this, and it still would not be saving those white stones on the right. So that's close to 25 points there, close to 10 points on the left, in the upper left corner, 10 points on the bottom side, and a bit more than 10 points on the left side. So that's 10, 20, 30, 55. 55 for black. White has 22 in the lower right corner. And needs 28 more points. 28, almost 30 more points. It seems very difficult. Yes, so that was the game variation. Let's just take it back to that. So that's about as much as white can expect. And white can push through here and maybe play this exchange. So this would be the most that white can hope for. He's on his last 4 minutes, so he's probably just trying to gain some thinking time at this point and trying to figure out what he's going to do in the center of the board. He's going to have to try to finish a good territory there. So if Shin Jinseo wins this game, excuse me, that's going to be the end of this match because he's already won 2 of the 5 games. So he has 2 wins and 1 loss. So if he wins today, it's going to be his 3rd win. After all of this, the right side has become relatively small. And the lower side is still big, so white has a choice between this move, in which case black would push out, or pressing from above, black would crawl, and it would be more like this. Okay, white K8 could potentially kill the K9 stone, but there are some problems involved with that. So we're talking about, okay, so white, yeah, that's an annoying move. Yes, I would say that Shin Jinseo is probably leading at this point. So he has a choice of trying to playing. He would the shape move, of course, would. Oh yeah, he just connected. So the shape move would be to push here. The problem with this is that for the time being, white can cut at this point. So that would be a weakness. And so yeah, he just connected. So that seems reasonable. And because of the Tari at Q11, it is still difficult for white to surround the side. So like black would break through this way. If white plays here, it's still not such a big territory. So like if black plays like this, again, that this forcing move is causing trouble for white. So the territory, the amount of territory white can expect to get here is very much limited. So yes, David was asking about this move. So white can push here. Ah, and probably would capture the one black stone. Uh, but black can probably afford to sacrifice that stone with stuff like this. It's going to be captured on a small scale, so black can do that, and would be doing stuff like this. Maybe pushing out here. Yeah, or just pushing. Um, Once white starts to try to surround the territory in the center of the board, there will be various directions from which black can come in and getting actually some potential extra black territory. So it does make it very difficult. We have to remember the ladder here, and the ladder actually doesn't work because it's still a ladder. So this is one piece of good news for white. Let's see what the game is doing. Okay, they're still at this point. And the clock on the server I'm looking at, it says that Shin Minjun is running out of time now. So he's on his last 20 seconds, and he should be going into overtime. Shin Jinseo still has almost 44 minutes. Right. Yes, it is. I think it's going to be a fairly painful endgame for white now. Okay, Nia Blarix is asking, Shinjo is black. Shinjinso is black, yes. How many captures for each one? Maybe he's asking about the record so far in this match. Shin Jinseo has 2 wins against Shin Minjun's 1 win. Okay. It looks suspiciously like Shin Minjun is starting to play time-saving moves because he seems to be in his overtime. So he has 1 minute per move for 3 times. So he can run out of a minute 2 times, and he'll be on his last time at that point. Okay, forcing moves. White J17. J17. Black would answer underneath. I think the shape on the lower side would be to push here. So this would be what I would expect. Playing this point, although this local shape here, it's okay. It's a kind of an okay shape. White is owing a move on the side here. So black would get to push out or play this move, one or the other. In either case, white's not really gaining that much territory. So in a variation like this, like white has potential to get a center territory of almost 20 points. So with variation like that. But even with this kind of thing, it's less than 20 points. And black is getting something back. So I'd say black's territory on the bottom side here, it's expanded by a few points. It's 5 or 6 points. Black is maybe going to get some territory in the center. It's going to have a tempo to push here, which is going to be annoying, threatening to escape from the ladder. And is probably going to end up playing this point at some point, which is going to put pressure on that white group. And white might end up having to connect dame. So even if white manages to surround the center, this is the kind of pattern where it's probably not going to be good enough for white. Okay, he's continuing to play forcing moves. I think Shin Minjun at this point, he's just at a minute per move, and he's trying to think of what to do next while he's playing forcing moves. So he just curled around. So that was a patient move. Black's going to answer that with something on the bottom side. So black can curl on the second line, or black can push on the third line. When did the game go wrong for white? That's a good question. It seems to be gradually getting better for black here throughout the game. So must have been something happening on the left side. I think the whole variation here in the lower right, maybe that variation was slightly better for black. So that was TLS asking about that. But then this fight on the left also, although white got to capture the 2 black stones in the center, that was probably not necessarily very good for white either, because black did get scooped out the whole left side, getting about 10 points of territory there. And all of white's profits are pointed towards the center. In this game, the center is actually not so big, because it's the size of the center of the board has been reduced by all of these fights, like this position they have in the lower right. The fact that black has strong positions pointing out into the center, it reduces the potential of white's moyo in the center. And so the direction of play is working fairly well for black here. And I think it's just gradually getting difficult for white as the game proves. This move was a very very practical move. I wouldn't have played there. I wouldn't have seen that move. Probably not even, if we ask an AI, it might not even be the correct move, but he's getting rid of the one remaining area that could be a large white's territory. So for human play, it's a very successful move, I would say. And black had no trouble with the center. So yes, so gradually pulling ahead, I would say. So white's playing a lot of forcing moves, just gaining time to think. And black pushed through. Okay, so when black pushes here, this stabilizes black's position on the lower side, and it reduces the value of the next move. So it's still a big move for black to, for instance, jump out here, but it's not as urgent as it was before. Black could have played here and forced white to connect, but the game move, it looks like he played the other way. So he played on this side. He's making a strong position in the center, and he's going to this is forcing white to add a stone to the right. So he's saying white should put a stone somewhere around here. And the idea is that with this forcing move, black's not going to play this sequence, but this is just about what we can expect. It's only about, like in the end, black's going to get this forcing move. It's just 5 or 6 points there that white gained on the side, so that's still less than 30 points locally on this whole area. And black is building a strong position in the center to set up moves like this, which again we'll be looking at the weakness here in some cases. So he's trying to take an aggressive stance in the center of the board, actually. Okay, so we're into that variation. He played one Atari. He might continue with playing the attachment or the variation I was showing. So he could play this variation. It's not really all that important to play it right away, but it is something that black can play at any point, and it's probably going to be forcing. Well, okay. GM Gandhi is asking a fairly valid question here. When I said that black's move at h6, I had the feeling it might not be correct, but it was still effective for human play. It's because well, the way the computer calculates its next move, it finds the move that in the computer's playout, it has the best winning percentage. So there's the numbers, the scores that computers give are actually an estimate of how likely you are to win the game. And they don't necessarily directly reflect the number of points you're going to win by. So there is that thing. So there's that. And 017. Well, yeah, I'll get to that later. 010, yeah. Well, it's bigger to capture the one stone. I think we're talking about the capture white just made on the first line. That was a big enough move. So yes. For human players, it is also very valuable in a way for a player to find a move that makes it very difficult for the opponent to continue effectively. So I think that's how the fact that black was taking away the one area that was relatively easy for white to turn into a territory by playing these moves. Well, I think that black could have started with the fight on the right, with actually some potential to attack white here, but this would have made the game more complicated and the road to victory for black maybe a bit more complicated, more difficult to navigate. By taking the territory with these two moves, he sort of hands the responsibility of guiding the game to white and giving white some difficult choices here. So it's making it more difficult for white to continue. And the fact that humans are fallible, and the fact that these games have time limits, there's time controls that do make using up time to try to figure the next move, it makes it an issue. So I think that these moves that force the opponent to try to making it very difficult to find the best move, and the fact that that's going to have an effect on how the time, how the remaining time is used. It is a very valid way to continue. So there's some real life things happening there. It doesn't necessarily have to be the best move according to a computer. So when white pushes through here, they paused here. So when white pushes through here, if black cuts and white continues this way, this doesn't seem to be working so well for white. So I think the idea might be that white is going to play on this side and make a territory on the side. So for instance, something like this would make this would actually make about 10 points in that area. So this seems to be the plan for white. Aha. And so black is sort of saying he doesn't want that to happen. So the idea here, yes. So obviously the first idea would be what happens if white connects here. And I think black is going to cut. Yes. And if white plays here, no, that's not working, is it? Maybe like this. This would be putting more pressure on white. Or if white plays this, in this case, black can escape. And yeah, so this is bad for white. So in this case, if white had continued with this, black would be able to capture on this side. But this one is also a bit troublesome. So black's making it more difficult for white to... So this would have been good for white. This would have been successful. So black's avoiding that variation with the peep here. Let's see how the game turned out. So it looks like this looks like it's white trying to make some shortage of liberties for black here. So the idea is that white is going to connect here. And black is starting to run low on liberty. So if black plays here, white will be able to play here and squeeze like this. Probably add a stone here then. Well, yes, Whiskers notes that first of all, Shin Jinseo is good at getting opponents in Byoyomi in overtime because he is a fast, he plays fast, so he's a quick player. And he gets them in difficult positions because he's good. Okay, yeah, so that's a kind of a trade. White probably can't ignore this because the center is in danger. White R7. Okay, if white R7, let's try to figure that one out. Maybe just in the center. I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. That was a shape move. So in the game, white pushed through here, black played here, and white started filling liberties. So it's the same idea as before. White is filling liberties here and has a squeeze coming up. So black plays here. I suppose white's going to play something like this. So this would, yeah, this would be okay for me. It would be connected anyway. Okay, so now the whole squeeze here is going to be forcing. After which, white does have to add a move, add a stone. So if white leaves it, let's see, does black have more than one way to play? Something like this should cut white off. So yeah. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, something like this cuts white off. And yeah, so that would lose the whole group there. So white probably needs to add a stone, something like this. Okay, they're in the process of playing the squeeze. So I wouldn't be surprised if white needs some time to think. Oh, but he's playing fairly quickly. Some players would take a minute for each move here, just to gain the thinking time. Okay, so already white does need to do something about the connection in the center of the board. It's not connected yet. Okay, okay. Oh, wow, that was quick. Right, yeah, I'm a fan of Fisher time, where you have a relatively small amount of basic time, and then you're given a certain amount of time for each move played. So it's used a lot in chess, and that was Bobby Fischer, who was the chess player. And it's a logical system in that in games like Go and chess, there's a certain number of moves that are kind of normal for a game to continue on. So like in a game like Go, the 1919 board, you can usually expect if the game plays out to the end and you play an end game, it's usually 200 and so moves, so something like 250 moves for a normal, relatively long game. And so you can multiply 250 by the amount of time you're going to give for each move, and that will be how much time the game is going to take. So it's really easy to make a kind of a guess as to how much time each game will take. And so it's good for organizers so they can sort of figure that out and schedule a tournament, and pretty reliable. And it's very logical in that the players don't have to use this minute of time to think about a move that they're going to play anyway, but they can spend the time when they actually need it, because if they play quickly, they get bonus time, which adds up. Okay, let's take another quick look at the territory. Black has a bit more than 10 points on the bottom now. It has a bit more than 10 points on the left side, about 10 points in the upper left corner. And the upper right corner, it's shrunk just a little bit. To 24 points. Oh, yeah, but he's gained points on the side. So it's larger. So it's more like, it's close to 30 points now. So 30, 40, 50, 60 points for black. Yeah, black has about 60 points. Yeah. So the lower right area is 28 points, actually close to 30 points for white. Yeah, and it still depends on the center, I guess. 30, 40, 50. But yeah, black does seem to have a small advantage. Looks like black's going to win. Very patient. Wow. So white's probably going to connect here, and he's just going to sort of slide into the center from the top side. Okay, Gerald's going to bed. Thanks for hanging in to the end. It looks like it's just settling down to an end game here. Shin Jinseo is playing very quickly. He seems confident. White does need to do something about black curling around at f16 here. b18 for white is not so big. Like it's several points, but yes, the center is bigger. The Atari on the right side, that's close to 10 points also. So yes, this is looks like it's connected. So white would like to be able to cut that off. No, that doesn't work, obviously. So yeah, but the problem is that these white stones cannot escape. So that wasn't working. Okay, so let's see if that works. So if black plays here, in this case, white would be able to squeeze from this side and capture that. So black has to be careful here. A move that looks like it could work would be this one. And I think it's going to be okay for white. White could do something like that. No, that's not working. That didn't work. That's dead for white. So what's white's going to do here? I don't see how white can escape, actually. Let's see what the game is doing. Okay, black played a hane. And white cut. So here, like if white played this way, black would play an Atari and get good shape like this. So that was probably the idea. And by cutting here, white is trying to get the Atari without giving black the Atari on the left. So if this happens, white's getting the whole territory. So in this case, black does get the Atari in place here. If black plays this way, black doesn't have time. Black doesn't have time to do that, so maybe white would even probably like this. So they're both playing very quickly here. Yeah, but he did pause at that move. So it looked to me like he could have played this one. This would have been the stronger move. So that's a question I have left here. I don't see how the white stone's going to escape. Kang Dong-yoon, actually, I don't remember having done a live broadcast of any of his games. He is one of the players that I've been following, but I generally wait for someone to come up to the final stages of a big tournament. So we'll see. Yeah, I'll be looking for that. Right, yeah, the bottom left is made smaller by the fact that it's not really an area that's white's territory anyway. White I9. Ah, maybe that variation that I was showing before. You know, there's no way for white to escape with these stones. It's really strange, but it works for black. So like this one would be just like this. This one would be, for instance, black could play here. It doesn't really matter. White's just dead. So black could have done that. I think this would have been better. But black's probably winning anyway. Okay, so with this move, black is probably expecting white to extend, and black will play here. And that's connected up. J8 and I12. Let's see what this is about. Okay, white pushed through. Oh, Shin Jinseo plays so quickly. He seems so confident. It's going to be difficult for white to try to cut these stones off, actually, because usually white would have to do something on the right. So let's try it this way. Maybe here. Yeah. And the problem is white is in Damezmari on the left. So like in this case, black would be able to connect up on the right. Or connect up on the left. It's one or the other. Yeah, so this is just not working. Okay, so what's happening here? White played here. So clearly black is able to connect up. So black could play something like this, no problem. He's trying to get something extra with this cut here. So usually white would just play like this. So what's the problem? So if white plays here and here, white can capture these two black stones. Black gets a cut here. Nothing special. Okay, so he pushed through in the center. I think he's trying to save this stone at E8, but it's hard to follow up with this when they're both playing so quickly. So black still has the opportunity to connect up in the center, but seems to be trying for something more than that. So yeah, black can cut here with Sente. When black pulls that one stone out, it's going to be a forcing move. So that stone is effectively going to be connected up. Yeah, and so this becomes a forcing move. So if white plays on the right, black will be able to pull out here and then connect here and capture one. So that was a forcing move. The real question is, what is he going to do on the other side? And I think he's going to push through and go into this version where he has the two stones to capture on the other side. So it looks like white's entire center area is going to disappear here. So finally, I guess white's final hope will be to make a race to capture. I don't see how it's going to work though. Okay, so yeah, black connects. So if white continues here, black can connect here with Sente and cut here. And yeah, actually, black has a number of choices. So let's try this one. This is the one that could potentially lead to a race to capture. So white's hoping for something like this. And it's going to be a one move difference. So this could be dangerous for black. Let's just look at the game, see how they finish it. So if black wants to play safe, he can cut here, forcing white to capture 4 stones on the right, and play an Atari. No, he would play here first. And then he's probably going to be okay. And so he connected. Yes, so white has to answer in the center. And black will be able to connect up. So if white answers here, then black can, let's see, does he just want to push through, I suppose? And the cut here is forcing, so black can cut here. So if white plays on this side, black will connect up on this side. So yes, this is white's strongest move, but it's probably just going to lose because black can push through here and play here. And now black does have a lot of extra. Black might want to, just to be safe, black can play some forcing moves here. So in this variation, I think black has enough liberties to be able to win the race to capture. It's just too many liberties on the outside. I think we're coming close to an end here. Oh yes, it looks like black won. So the server is saying that black won by resignation. So again, I'll show you a continuation. In order to cut the black group off, white does have to continue here. And like just ignoring all the weaknesses in white's shape. As it is, the race to capture, if it turns into something like this, assuming that nothing is happening with all these weaknesses in white's shape, it turns out white is one move ahead. So it's a very precarious victory for white, which is already it's not working because black can at any point play a double Atari. In actual play, black would probably be able to play here also. And after this exchange, black is threatening to cut on the third line. And so black has ways to increase his liberty. So actually white would connect here. And then black goes back to the center and is winning by a couple of moves. So if black had messed up and played the wrong order of moves, for instance, if black had played this move at an earlier point and not being able to play those forcing moves in the center, a semi like this would have been more dangerous. So this would have been potentially a win for white by just a one move difference. But the fact that he set it up so he could push through at that point. So the fact that he didn't play any extra cuts like at this point. If black had started playing moves like exchanges like this, it would have complicated things. It was good that he kept, or if he had started from the other side like this would have made it more dangerous. So actually white would play here and white would play here. This would have been the dangerous variation for black. The fact that he started from the other side here and had time to push through here made it very safe for black. So that was sharp to the end of the game. Sharp play. Okay. So thanks everyone for staying to the end. And I'll be back next time I find a good international tournament. This time it was a bit late in telling everyone I was going to do it. I didn't know myself until the last minute. And actually, to be frank, I hadn't noticed this tournament, but it is the two players. I think I think they're the strongest players in the world, the strongest two players. Generally, Shin Jinseo is ranked top in Korea, and Shin Minjun is generally ranked second in Korea, I think, in recent times at least. Park is also one of the prominent players in Korea, but I sort of like Shin Minjun, and he seems to do better in the international tournaments. So my two favorite players were playing, and that's why I sort of suddenly decided to do this one. I'll be looking for more international tournaments. So thank everyone for being here to the end. I'll give you my channel link once more, just in case you want to sign up to the channel now. And my Patreon link for people who want to support the channel. So I'm trying to support Go content. Was that was the Patreon link? Okay, that's for people who want to support my channel, help me give contents to people throughout the world. And I already do have close to 100 Patreons, supporters at Patreon, helping me do this for free. So thanks to all of you, and goodbye. See you next time.